In the beginning of the episode we see a giant meteorite is falling from the sky toward a mountain. As it tears through the air, a voice introduces itself as the Archfiend, the very embodiment of evil. The Archfiend recalls how he has spent more than 1,000 years patiently waiting for the perfect moment. Throughout all that time, he has held on to a single goal, taking revenge on the gods who defeated him long ago. The meteorite finally crashes into the mountain with tremendous force, shaking the entire surrounding area. Meanwhile, Haruko and the villagers are enjoying a huge feast. The celebration is being held to mark their safe return from the hot spring region. Everyone is in high spirits, enjoying good food and spending time together after their successful trip. Haruko walks over to the group of girls and thanks them for all the hard work they put in during the journey. The girls happily accept his gratitude, but Tia is still annoyed whenever she thinks about Varjave. She complains about how troublesome and irritating he was throughout the trip. Gran Maria notices that Tia is still dwelling on the issue and suggests that everyone stop worrying about it for now. Since they are having a celebration, she believes they should just relax and enjoy themselves while they feast. Haruko cannot help but think back on everything that happened during their journey. He remembers how Lu's group managed to discover 7 mysterious stones. After returning, Haruko made sure each of those stones was carved into statues representing the gods. He also recalls the strange dark aura that once surrounded the stones, though that aura has now disappeared completely. Haruko hopes that whatever danger it represented is finally gone and that everything will remain peaceful. As Haruko continues making his way around the feast, he suddenly notices a familiar face among the guests. To his surprise, Bezel is attending the celebration. Haruko did not expect to see him there, so he immediately asks what brought him to the village. Bezel explains that he happened to have some free time. Since he was not busy with work, he decided to stop by and join the celebration. Haruko welcomes him warmly and is glad to see him there. Glad to see him enjoying himself with the villagers. Before they can continue their conversation, something nearby catches their attention. They notice Graz openly confessing his feelings to Renana right in front of everyone, and Renana seems to be responding positively. Bezel explains that Graz had been wanting to come to the village for quite some time. Apparently, he missed Renana so much that he kept begging Bezel to bring him along. In the end, Bezel finally gave in and allowed him to come. Seeing the two of them together, Haruko is happy that their relationship appears to be progressing smoothly. As the celebration continues, Haruko notices Drime sitting with another man and enjoying a drink. Curious about the stranger's identity, he asks Bezel who the man is. Bezel explains that the guest is one of the 4 demon lords. Not only is he one of the most powerful figures in the demon race, but he also serves as the Minister of Internal Affairs. Hearing this, Haruko is surprised that someone so important is casually attending the village feast alongside everyone else. The man's name is Randon, and Haruko is even more surprised by how friendly and humble he is despite holding such a high position. As they continue talking and enjoying the feast, a small accident occurs. A few drops of Randon's drink spill onto Drime's shirt. Randon immediately panics, drops to his knees, and begins apologizing over and over again. However, Drime simply laughs it off and tells him not to worry since it was only a minor mistake. A short while later, Vargaif arrives at the feast. Haruko takes the opportunity to thank him for all the help he provided during their trip. Vargaif admits that the journey was incredibly exhausting and put a lot of strain on him. Fortunately, the hot springs gave him a chance to rest and recover, leaving him feeling refreshed and energized once again. While they are talking, Vargaif suddenly notices a cat sitting nearby. Curious, he asks Haruko why he suddenly has a cat. Haruko explains that he happened to come across the stray cat one day. The cat seemed unusually friendly, and since it did not, he did not seem to have an owner, so Haruko decided to take him in. The story then shifts back to the Archfiend as he reflects on his past. Long ago, he fought against the gods in a great battle. However, he was defeated by the evil gods and sealed away. For countless years, he remained trapped beneath the land. As time passed, he was supposed to slowly fade away and disappear completely. But the Archfiend refused to accept that fate. Instead, he held on to his hatred and continued waiting for the day he could finally take revenge on the gods who had defeated him. Unfortunately for him, things did not go according to plan. The statues of the gods that Hiraku created using the 7 stones suddenly activated. Their divine power began purifying the Archfiend's existence. Little by little, his consciousness started to fade away. The purification continued until the Archfiend was completely transformed and reborn as a cat. That cat turned out to be the very same stray cat that Hiraku later found and adopted. During the process, the Archfiend lost all of his powers. The terrifying being who once dreamed of destroying the gods was reduced to nothing more than an ordinary house cat, with no power left and no way to change his situation. Eventually, he accepted his fate and gave up on his plans for revenge. Meanwhile, high above in heaven, the gods observe everything that has happened. They watch as the former Archfiend now lives as a harmless cat. The chief god explains that the divine power within the statues granted the Archfiend salvation. Rather than being completely erased, he was purified and transformed into a cat. The chief god further explains that the Archfiend will live out the rest of his current life in that form. After the cat eventually dies, he will be reborn once again as the Archfiend. The god of agriculture then comments that Hiraku has essentially become the embodiment of divine blessings. The chief god agrees with that observation. However, he says that he has no intention of interfering with Hiraku's life. Rather than controlling him or directing his actions, he simply wants Hiraku to continue living peacefully and happily in his village. The god of agriculture then points out that the entire situation began because the chief god originally sent Hiraku to the forest of death. She reminds him that this decision was the reason so many unexpected events happened in the first place. In response, the chief god argues that, despite everything, Hiraku has accomplished many good deeds and positively changed the lives of countless people. It is then revealed that the chief god had actually been punished for sending Hiraku to the forest of death. The other gods believed his decision had been reckless and irresponsible. However, after seeing everything Hiraku has achieved and realizing that the situation ultimately led to many positive outcomes, the punishment is finally lifted, prompting the chief god to celebrate a little. The next morning in the Great Tree Village, Urza is pestering and to read her a story. However, Anne is busy serving breakfast to everyone and does not have time to sit down and read. Seeing this, Hakurin offers to read a story to Urza instead. Unfortunately, Urza still does not seem to like her very much. Rather than accepting the offer, she simply sticks out her tongue at Hakurin and refuses. Even though Urza lost her memories, she has become one of the most energetic and cheerful people in the village. She is always eager to try new things and adapts quickly to her surroundings. Because of her outgoing personality, she gets along well with nearly everyone in the Great Tree Village. The only exception is Hakurin, and that fact is becoming more obvious by the day. Hakurin is clearly bothered by this. She notices that Urza seems fascinated whenever Lasti transforms into a dragon. Hoping to impress her, Hakurin transforms into a dragon as well. However, Urza barely pays any attention to her and remains focused on Lasti instead. This only makes Hakurin even more jealous. Hiraku and the village maids notice the awkward relationship between the two. The maids speculate that Urza's dislike of Hakurin might be connected to their first meeting. Back when Urza was still in her previous form, Hakurin had given her quite a beating. Even though Urza lost her memories, the maids wonder if some lingering feelings from that experience still remain. The following day, Hiraku walks outside and notices Urza playing with soil. She is carefully shaping it into a small doll. Using her magic, she creates a control stone and places it inside the doll. For a brief moment, the doll comes to life and starts moving on its own. Unfortunately, its body is too weak to maintain its shape, and it quickly crumbles apart. Hakurin happens to witness the failed attempt and decides to help. She walks over to Urza and shows her one of her dragon scales. Without any hesitation, Hakurin crushes the scale into a fine powder using nothing but her bare hands. Urza then uses the powder to create a much stronger control stone. This time, when she places the stone inside the doll, the result is completely different. The doll becomes fully active and remains stable. Urza is delighted by the success and immediately thanks Hakurin for helping her. It becomes clear that Hakurin has finally earned Urza's trust and friendship. The doll itself turns out to be far more powerful than anyone expected, effortlessly splitting large logs in half as if they were made of paper. Everyone who witnesses the demonstration is amazed by its strength. Later, Lucy sees the doll's performance and asks what happened. Hiraku explains how Urza created the doll and mentions that a dragon scale was used to make the control stone. Upon hearing this, Lucy is completely shocked. Dragon scales are considered some of the rarest and most valuable materials in existence. Very few people would ever have access to one, let alone use one so casually. What surprises her even more is how the scale was processed. Dragon scales are famously difficult to break down because of their incredible durability. So when Lucy learns that Hakurin simply crushed the scale into powder with her bare hands, she is left completely speechless. That revelation serves as yet another reminder of just how powerful Hakurin truly is. A little later, Hiraku notices that Ya and the elves are busy working on a new invention. They are trying to build a catapult and seem extremely excited about the project. As they continue working, Hideto comes up with an idea. He suggests making the catapult much larger so it can launch bigger objects over greater distances. Before long, the elves begin imagining all sorts of possibilities, including using it as an incredibly powerful weapon. They bring the idea to Hiraku and try to convince him to support the project. However, Hiraku immediately turns them down. He has no interest in creating weapons, especially ones capable of causing large-scale destruction. At the same time, he knows there is no point in trying to completely stop the elves from experimenting. Elves are naturally curious, skilled with their hands, and always eager to create something new. Instead of forbidding them from working on inventions, Hiraku gives them just one rule. They are free to make whatever they want as long as it is not intended for violence or harming others. Not long afterward, they lose interest in the catapult project and begin searching for something else to work on. Seeing this, Hiraku decides to give them a new challenge. He asks them to create a lid for one of his cooking pots. The elves immediately get to work. What initially seems like a simple task quickly turns out to be much more difficult than expected. They spend a long time testing different ideas and making adjustments. After many attempts, they finally produce a prototype. Hiraku is impressed by the design and believes it might actually work. Unfortunately, the invention ends up being a complete failure. Once the pot begins building up pressure, the lid shoots upward with tremendous force and slams into the ceiling. The experiment ends in disaster, forcing everyone to abandon the idea. Not wanting to give up, the elves move on to another project. This time, they attempt to create a massage chair. The chair is designed to relieve tension and help people relax. However, once they test it, they quickly realize there is a major problem. The massage mechanism is far too powerful. Instead of feeling relaxing, it feels more like being attacked by a machine. While the chair is uncomfortable for most people, the elves actually enjoy it because their shoulders are much stronger and tenser than those of ordinary people. Even so, the invention is not suitable for general use, so Hiraku gives them another project. This time, he suggests something much simpler. Springs. His goal is to create something that can make beds, seats, and other surfaces softer and more comfortable. The elves immediately begin experimenting. However, by the time they finish, they end up making the springs much larger and more powerful than Hiraku originally imagined. After seeing the results, Hiraku comes up with a new idea. Instead of using the springs for furniture, he suggests installing them in large vehicles and horse-drawn carriages to create a smoother ride. There is only one problem: the village does not actually own any horse-drawn carriages. To solve this issue, the elves travel with Lasti and visit Michael. They purchase a carriage and bring it back to the village. Once it arrives, the elves quickly install their newly created springs into it. The first test, however, does not go as planned. The springs turn out to be much weaker than expected and fail to improve the ride very much. Fortunately, Ya is not discouraged. She confidently says that if the springs are too weak, they can simply make stronger ones. The elves continue improving their design and eventually create a much more powerful version. Excited by their progress, they decide to conduct a durability test. They take the carriage to the top of a ramp and send it flying off the edge, expecting it to land safely thanks to the springs. The landing is certainly successful, but the springs prove to be far too powerful. Instead of settling back onto the ground, the carriage begins bouncing uncontrollably. Seeing this unbelievable sight, Hiraku asks how the springs became so absurdly strong. Hideto then reveals the answer. To reinforce the springs, the elves used dragon scales as part of the construction materials. After many more experiments, failures, and adjustments, the elves finally managed to find a practical solution. Rather than continuing with the overly powerful coil springs, they switched to a more conventional plate spring design. The finished product turned out to be a major success. The springs made carriage rides significantly smoother and more comfortable, reducing bumps and shocks during travel. Even after completing the project, the elves showed no signs of slowing down. Their curiosity remained as strong as ever, and they were already thinking of ways to improve their creations or develop entirely new inventions. That's it for today. Like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.